All right, we're finally going.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so you've never been to MacTech, you've never been to
Mac
MacAdmin or any Mac type conference? All right.
Other than like a Macworld or I've been to those,
So
but
there was Macworld, and then they had the separate IT conference. You never went to the IT conference.
correct.
Right.
Correct.
I mean,
It's actually the first of them I'd heard of.
Okay.
Other than some of the boot camps I think I may have seen when I was looking for something local at one point.
So then as a conference newbie, how was everything?
I thought it was great. I mean, it made me want to attend all of the conferences.
Oh, good.
Which I may try to join at least MacTech. I don't know if I'll get my company to send me to Sweden, but
Yeah.
I thought it was really great. The group was just as friendly as you'd expect from hanging out in OS 10 server, coming to these meetings. A lot of the sessions were really great. There were, I thought, a lot of time slots that could have been worked on a little bit where it seemed like if you were interested in one particular topic, they were all during the same time slot, so you wouldn't be able to go to more than one of them.
As speaking as someone who puts on a conference, like that's a tough thing to deal with because you want to offer all this content. When I started MacTech conference, it was virtually a single track conference because I felt the same thing. I wanted this shared experience. I didn't want people to feel torn, but I've kind of slowly been moving to kind of what Penn State does, having a few things going on at once. But when I do that, I don't usually have like as many things going on as Penn State, but also I'll try to do a very technical thing at the same time as a very businessy sort of thing. So you don't find it's like the people who are really looking to dig into the code and stuff are not the people who are like, how do I run my business better? And if there is some overlap, it's usually very small. So like that's a tough, and I mean I know Dave and Justin and Rusty, and I know they try to balance all that stuff as best they can, and they always do a good job. So.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to suggest that it was poor. It just there were an awful lot of times where I ran into a
problem. Like WWC has that problem.
Right.
I want to go to 3 sessions. It's a tough problem.
Yeah, it's great though that at least they do the conference videos online. Those haven't been posted yet, but once they are, I can sort of attend some of the others after the fact, and you kind of get some diversity that way. But it was a tremendous learning experience. You get to meet a ton of people who.
That's the driver for me going to conferences. I have to admit, I go to conferences and I won't go to any sessions sometimes. Oh, maybe not any, but that's not the drive. the driver for me to go to the conference. Like,
Yeah.
I did the sessions are just like, right? I don't know. I never get much out of sessions. Usually. Right?
I give a lot into sessions.
Yeah.
And I focus on giving a lot into sessions, and then I end up like buddying into sessions that fall ridiculously short on runtime. So I always am kind of, I'm not planning out that like, oh, I'm definitely going to be interested in the content and finding out some rough things, but it's more that, oh, I know that guy's going to present well.
Yeah, sometimes that. Yeah, sometimes I'll go to a session because that's my buddy, or whatever. But usually, content-wise, I'm there for the people. I'm there for the networking, the social aspect.
Yeah.
My video's up on Box, but it's not in YouTube yet.
I was just watching one of your videos from last year this morning, actually, on backups.
Yeah, they put me in the
front.
first of the morning slot, and I'm the perfect first thing in the morning speaker. My brain does work first thing in the morning, but that was another one where it was like I had more energy than everybody in the room, and so it's kind of like raising the dead, trying to get audience participation.
Because they had all been networking till 3 o'clock in the morning.
Networking on the 4th floor in the lounge, yes,
Yeah.
networking.
So that is a tough thing too. Like with MacTech, I've kind of suggested each day starts later and later. But then you have all this content, and you're like, oh my god, where am I going to put it? And like just you end up starting days earlier than you want to, just to fit everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I would like to do that. Yeah, I'd like day 2 to start at 10, and day 3 to start at like 11. Yeah, people are a wreck after all the activities.
Sure.
They did a 30 minutes between each talk, and that was pretty nice.
Yeah.
So you could really then have a conversation with people.
Oh, that's nice.
And you don't feel like you're rushed to go run
Was
off
that
to the next
new?
one.
I don't remember. If
Yeah.
It was new.
That was
Before it
new.
was
Yeah, I started
15.
that at MacTech. I did that starting 2 years ago. I did 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off, 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off. Yeah, because the hallway conversations, to me, again, is the most important part of all of this.
There were still people who were like, I wanted to ask you this, but there was a line or something that's like, it's 30 minutes, and you know where I am. Like, I'm not going anywhere.
Again, not to compare, but like at MacTech, I forget if it was it last year or the year before that, I just told people like, no Q&A. Don't bother with Q&A because
You're going to get it in the end.
yeah, people will just tackle you after the session and ask. Like, I find Q&A to be. I think that's another turnoff for me in sessions. It's like people ask me questions that are just 90% of the room that doesn't apply to. So you're sitting there listening to this person's question, or they're asking a question about something the person actually covered.
Right.
I had 4 people straight up interrupt me, and it was awesome. Because it was like, I didn't even have stuff on the slide. It was great, because they were like, yeah, but how do I actually connect that? And I'm like, let's talk about that. Thank you so much for bringing it up. But a bunch of people were kind of like, really? Really, you can? I'm like, yeah, good morning. Like,
You
Like,
didn't
it's
drive
awesome.
anyone like Rich.
I did somehow I didn't. I played house music for them. Maybe that was it. That they were in a very loose mood. They felt they were in Ibiza.
The only Q&As that seem to be actually really helpful are the ones where, I mean, not just like filling time, right? A presentation goes faster than you expected or than the material allows. But some of the Q&As actually seem to allow for, because most of the room is already so knowledgeable, sometimes somebody asks a question that the speaker may have part of the answer for, but a conglomeration of like 4 other people in the room know the rest of the answer. And sometimes it brings out good discussion that way. Not always, but
Discussion.
yeah.
Freaking Greg was sitting at Graham's feet while I was presenting. Because the room was packed.
Quite literally.
Like literally at his feet. Like tapping away, a tappa, tappa, tappa. There wasn't much eyes going up except when Graham said, there are machines, they're not the use of machines. So they can't sign in with Apple ID. and Greg just like,
So I have to admit there was
Man, daunting.
but there was a conference session I attended not too long ago, and like the guy opened it up to Q&A, and like, there's something that he said that was just bothering me because I knew he threw this statistic out there with no data. I was like, when you said this, like, how are you verifying that? It's like, well, I was assuming it's got to be the way. I'm like, no, because I've done benchmarks and blah, blah, and I was like, oh, I gotta. I
Unclench.
really rip this guy apart, and I just like, it was frustrating, especially in the tech world. Like, don't throw something out and say like, oh well, I'm just assuming that's.
You're gonna get called on it, yeah.
It's like, no, in fact, it's the exact opposite of what you'd expect. And I have the data to back it up.
You can get away with that in a room full of neophytes, maybe, but you still shouldn't. And so
no, you shouldn't. So, as a first-time conference person, what made you go? Was it peer pressure? Like, hey, we're all going.
It's honestly, I did not discover this entire community built up around. I feel like this IRC group, OSX-server.
The conference scene came before OS 10 server.
In my case,
at the very least.
in my case, I came to it a little bit late, I guess. This has only been going for about 5 years, but for the first 3 or 4 of those years, I was in a consulting field. I don't know, I just never got tied into the right channels that pointed back to it. And it was really when I was looking at some kind of an alternative to like Casper, bringing my new company under the real like Mac management deployment the right way, kind of an umbrella, that I came upon Monkey and Auto Package and all these other tools, and then you start digging in on those, and you eventually find your way to this community. In my case, it was through OS 10 server. Found out about these meetings and found out the conferences exist, and I think I signed up for it the same day I found out it was around. Went and tapped one of the partners of my company on the shoulder and said, "Hey, I want to go to this thing."
It's a great one to start out with, especially if you're on the East Coast. Right? It's like super close. Like travel is nothing. The conference is super affordable. Like,
yeah.
You go. That's actually a funny problem that they have, right? Because it's run by the school as a non-profit conference, so they have to ensure that they don't make money. It's actually a problem for them as they put it on.
Yeah. Not only that, but they can't do things like some of the evening events were like going to a baseball game or whatever, and because the money is technically flagged as tuition money, they're not allowed to allocate it for something like sending us to a baseball game or soiree with a view in the football arena. And so it's actually people like Jamf and some of the other sponsors who wind up paying for that part of it, I guess, in exchange for getting to show up at the event.
Yeah, it's part of the sponsorship.
Yeah.
I'm sure. So anyway, what brought you to Penn State? Was this your first time there?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Essentially, it was meeting my predecessor who worked at Montclair and moved over to Rutgers University, introductions type of thing.
So I have a question. I think that's specific to you out of everyone in this room. And it's my biggest curiosity, the date change. So Penn State every year ran their conference in May.
Okay.
This is the first year they moved it to July. And so the first year, someone will probably correct me on this, I forget if it was the first year or the first 2 years that they did this conference, it was education only.
First.
So only the first year then. And then as the conference grew and they opened it up, the conference grew, it still had this very heavy lean toward education. And every year that I went, I met more people in the education field than I met at any conference ever. And then last year they announced the new dates in July, and all the education people kind of went, "That's our busiest time of the year. Like, what are you doing to us?" So I'm curious.
It was still mostly educators.
They still made it. It wasn't a big deal.
The
They
stat
gave a
was,
graph
over 170 were higher ed, I think.
There were only over 170 were higher ed, and then K through 12 was a huge segment as well. I know the people who made up corporate, out of the 392 or 397 attendees in total.
The stats down.
Yeah.
Well, he gave us the raw stats on an actual bar graph.
I think there were 72. I remember numbers. It just happens. But there were, I think, 72 who were there from corporate, and like non-EDU. I think there was some small segment they broke out that was government, but the vast majority of the attendees were from EDU in one.
Well, I'm glad to see
form or
that
another.
still, that didn't pull away a big core of their base. I mean, that again, that sort of the K through 12. When I met people at the Penn State conference, those people always fascinated me because those were usually the people that don't have a background, a formal background in computers, or computer science, or whatever. And those are the people like, well, I'm the science teacher. Oh, you like computers? You're the IT administrator now, and they kind of get thrown into the role. And it was just a good grounding for me to remember those are our customers very often. That sort of the end of the chain of building tools. These people who just really really want point and click tools.
Right.
Those are the people. So
the auto packager, is that with an R at the end?
New one. That's
the last
GUI
one.
for
Auto package, yeah.
But so this didn't again. When I was consulting, I consulted for a school for a while, and the summer, teachers go home that last day, and you're now all right, time to get some work done, upgrade the network and re-image every machine. So this didn't affect your.
No, it really didn't. At least not for me. If anything, it threw a couple more tools in the shop essentially that I could use. And I mean, some of them are a bit older, but I actually have found quite useful. And I started implementing a couple of them already.
Oh, great. So what did you learn? Yeah. What was the big takeaway?
One tool was luggage. I mean, it's been around for quite some time. But
invented here syndrome.
Sorry?
Invented here syndrome.
Yeah. But I found that quite useful. So.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Anything that lets you do things in a consistent, repeatable fashion. Yep. Yes, we're big fans of that. Okay. Anything else? What else?
A lot of the other tools I already had been familiar with. I've been fortunate to have come from a K-8 district that actually already implemented a lot of these tools.
Oh.
I was the Mac specialist for them, along with the sysadmin there. So
at this K-8 district, what were they using to manage all their Macs?
The magic triangle, AD, Open Directory, and Monkey, essentially. Yeah.
Oh, Monkey's part of the magic triangle now.
Yeah, for us it was. That was our magic triangle.
Magic triangle
that we called
something else.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Cylinder of Destiny.
and then various other tools that we use there.
Very cool. How about you, Alistair? How was your?
I slept every once in a while.
Yeah.
You can't get me to shut up, so they actually gave me a lapel mic during Graham's talk.
Oh boy.
But it was nice. The feedback that I gave them was there was nice rolling buses in the evening, so you didn't have to worry about missing the meal. They served meals somewhat longer in the evenings. Lunch, it felt like they cleaned up immediately. But the half hour between sessions was great. That I would intentionally sit at the end of the hallway between the sessions and the dining, just to be able to meet people. I was like, I'm not going to be able to meet this person unless I just stake it out, unless I just hang out and also get yelled at by people. Also bounce off of people. But we might have recorded an episode of the podcast. Might. I'm not going to promise anything.
AFP.
Yeah. I recorded. I'm getting into I learned it by watching you, Dad. I actually videoed my own presentation so that I could control. I used the mic this time though as well. Turns out my lapel mic was, I guess, hot, or I was speaking too loud. One or the other.
Well,
so my audio was just clipping nonstop in the recording, so I was able to fix that with my audio. So I got to be a little bit more the completist, spend enough time at the pub, spend very little time in a weird football stadium, that was empty.
You're a bit of a legend at Legends, I hear.
If I drank beer, maybe. But we drank in the lobby, and they were playing Space Team in the lobby, and I got to catch the guy who gave the packet capture presentation. I'm like, this beer is for you. And he was like, yeah. And it was good times were had by all, in my opinion.
Very helpfully, by the way, he posted his actual speaker notes for his session.
Yeah.
I highly recommend them. In case your French accent.
That was
to
QoS.
English.
That's what he was saying. QoS. Duh. What else would he be saying?
Yeah, it was a brilliant presentation. I thought it was great. Packet snipping for admins.
Yeah. It was not like he was not connecting the dots for you. He was saying, here's what you can get started with to just have some data. Yuan Guinea. Why Guinea on the Twitters, you may have noticed, because like Laurent B, Stefan Soudre,
Yeah, of course.
I see their conversations ping pong back and forth. He wrote, but Yuan wrote the reversing the Apple Remote Desktop password database app and a Bonjour broadcaster for campus wide. Like he gave you like a one console way of spinning up Bonjour broadcasts across wide area networks. Like he's got some crazy tools that he's put out there, and therefore they're very as well network specific. So he just did something about, hey, here's how to get started. Trust this one, don't trust this one. Here's what you need to do if you want to sniff on cellular. It's like rock and roll, man. Like I can actually now troubleshoot end to end these things, whether or not I'm gonna understand the DHCP handshake. You know, like whether or not I understand how all the protocols interact underneath the covers, at least start me with the data and the right way to get it.
Yeah.
Some of the way to start to digest it, and it's Wireshark is doing the interpretation for you in a lot of respects. Then you can do the research after the fact or call in specialists, but you'll at least have the data first.
Yeah.
They won't have to start with, oh, okay, now I gotta find where to attach stuff. But Graham was pretty hilarious after that. He was kind of like, I'm making him empty his pockets if he's coming on to any of my job sites. Because he had like this 4-way cube tap that you take duplex and you split off the lines. And I totally was like, I thought I was going to like show off for him. And I was kind of like, so that knocks it down to 10100, right? And he's like, no, this is gigabit. I'm like, okay, okay. Because he's doing video stream sniffing. I'm like, whoa. Like the amount of data that you need to pull off a video stream. Versus onboard equipment, right? Because there's actually equipment that you can store it on
like
flash. But this is like it's like a throwing. I think they call it a throwing star, and there's 4 ports on it. Yeah. Well, like you then have to take 2 streams off of it for the duplex.
Right. No, I get that, but I'm saying this is a standalone
device.
Effectively, standalone.
You put it in line with the network connectivity. Yeah, but Graham was like, empty pockets, like, before you're walking down in my...
Oh, I like that.
This is a guy when he sits down.
Man, it was an awesome presentation.
Yeah.
And he just like, and I was concerned about the French, and the French was like being able to give an entire talk. He was sick too. He just absolutely soldiered right through it. It's awesome.
I have a friend who's who I talk to often. I just spoken to 2 days earlier in Denver. And he has a fairly thick French accent, and I can understand every word he says, but for some reason, Yoann, I was just like, he was I don't know exactly what it was, but whenever he would leap, like, 'cause my brain was too busy processing the actual technical information, I didn't have enough horsepower left over to do the dialect change.
To pick up on the...
Yeah, and find myself lost from time to time.
Someone just posted a link to that Throwing Star Land tab in IRC.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
That looks super interesting.
Yeah, and they, of course, like give you a guide to build your own if you're so inclined. Because it's one of those places.
So that sounds like an interesting one. Were there any other sessions that you walked away from and went, wow, that is going to like help. That's going to change my life?
There was actually one. There were a few that I walked away from that I thought were really great, but the one that impacted me the most in terms of just like density of information that I thought was useful to somebody who was getting started was one that was done by Brian Meehan and
Dennis Worcester?
Dennis Worcester, thank you. It was their getting started guide almost to like being a Mac sysadmin and using all of the tools that get talked about at these conferences. And I thought that I downloaded their presentation. I didn't attend their session because my workshop on the first day was a lot of redundant info. Brian had actually attended the same workshop I did, and so I went and caught another one, but I immediately downloaded it as soon as it became available. And I thought that 49-page PDF was like the thing you should hand that guy who is the science teacher who just took over for some K through 12 sysadmin kind of a role or whatever.
Wow.
So I thought that was actually really great. I haven't seen the video of it yet to know about the video content of the presentation, but judging by their PDF, it was really quite good.
A lot of people enjoyed Steve Uroff's From Out of the Box to Ready to Rock. Just like, hey, if you've never touched any of this before, hey, you want to take it all the way to thin imaging even, or no imaging. Here's how you can layer on stuff and all of the tools you'll need to build from scratch.
Yeah.
We're going to get Monkey going. We're going to use Monkey and Roll even. We're going to use Deploy Studio. We're going to get everything in place for you to have a deployment pipeline.
See, that's great. And again, I think if they didn't lose that education crowd, it sounds like the perfect presentation for that, for the majority of that audience, which is great.
Yeah, I don't think we had an IPv6 this year. I don't think so. We didn't have other foundational like DNS or other ones, even though a lot of things were labeled foundational. Like Graham's was labeled foundational, except he said, "Here are all the tools you should use. I'm going to list them. Here's why I'm listing them, and here we're going to walk through a workflow of how you interact with them." But that was.
What was his session? What was that session called?
Automate yourself out of a job.
Okay, that makes sense.
It was kind of like saying, hey, if you clip all these things together, you will not have much in the way of.
That's foundational-ish.
Yeah.
Mostly.
That was the one where he had Greg as well, so he might have been a little rushed.
Yeah. I thought there was one session in particular by a guy who I think was new to the conference by the name of Josh Malone called "What the Heck is Wrong with My Server?"
Yeah, that one sounded really good. I'm looking forward to that video.
Yeah, and I saw it. He's from the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. And he's obviously like a very hardcore Linux guy. And so he almost starts off his presentation with, you kind of sort of can do this on a Mac, but you really should do this on a Linux box.
Interesting.
Which was all about setting up a Nagios server and...
Oh, yeah, it's a lot easier on Linux.
Yeah, and some of the very advanced things you can do with it. And he really dives into there. It was flagged as an intermediate session, but I thought it was actually one of the most advanced of the whole workshop. It was very technically heavy.
Well, that's another one that's really hard to pin down in advance. Sort of like, I've been speaking at conferences for like 10 years or something, and a lot of people who run conferences will give speakers feedback sheets, and you get the bell curve, right? You get a bunch of people that go, it was too basic, and you get a bunch of people that go, it was too advanced, and then you get the 80% sort of like right in the middle,
Sweet
going,
spot,
yeah, it's just right. But no matter what you present, you could present on quantum physics, and people are like, oh, too basic, whatever. Like they're going to be those people, and they're going to be the people that, no matter what topic you're presenting on, they're so new to it. They're going, oh, way too bad, over my head. I don't know what that guy was talking about. So that's always a tough thing, I think, to judge. I don't ever label those as Mac Tech. I don't ever label them as like basic.
Advanced,
I mean, if you like the topic, go. But I'm not going to try to figure out if it's advanced or basic for you.
Yeah.
We had a couple of soft skills as well.
Yeah. Vanessa White?
Yes.
Yep. Everyone said that was a really good presentation.
That was a really good presentation. And she handed out Sheep Shaver to everybody with a bunch of like System 7 and like OS 7, OS 9
Oh, that's cool.
images and like old games on it that are a blast from the past if you were using that stuff back in the 90s or whatever.
Very cool.
But good soft skills. Tom Bridge had another very good soft skills one. A lot of shout outs to a book I first heard about through Alistair's recorded video session from last year.
People are talking about that?
Time
I
management for
can't
sysadmins.
believe still, I mean, you know, Tom's a good guy. I just can't believe that book is still like such a thing.
Yeah.
So you mean
the only time
Tiposano
management
or
book that actually sort of
time management?
time management.
Yeah.
Because I've read a lot of like getting things done and all these systems, but he's right when he talks in the early chapters of that book about how all these books are assuming you're not getting interrupted once every like 2 to 4 minutes, and you have to have sort of some system of I don't know. It's a useful book. I do wish it was updated from 2007 to 2014 would be really great, but
I think it's,
No, that's cloud management. Isn't
no,
it?
no, that's his new book, but I heard that he was okay. But I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I just find all of the getting things done to a point. Like to a point, it's either something sort of built into you or it isn't. Like you either get it or you don't. No matter how many books you read, like either you're ready to change your habits or you're not. No matter how many books you read, like.
Well, it's like a to-do list can make you feel guilty. And if you're really invested in something, maybe you can prioritize your lives around those things that you want to accomplish, is what some people's methodology is, to completely be devoid of all systems. But it's still a good thing to at least look at from how you're going to survive, how other people survive in the way of examples.
I have to say I'm really jealous of all the people I met who are, I mean, not just jealous. There's some bad things that go along with it, of course, but all the people who are part of these IT teams where you just sort of like had somebody in the room you can bounce ideas off of, and if you need to go work on a project for half a day or a couple of days, you can have somebody else run interference for you.
Yeah.
Penn State told me they have an IT team of 1,200 people, which I'm not at all jealous of. I think that's a little fractured, but
large. Well,
Yeah.
I think I remember talking
There's
to them
like
about
50
this once.
campuses.
Yeah,
there's
each
just stuff like-
department has an IT group.
they have
Whatever.
different tools they use, but
We have 500 IT people.
500?
And growing.
Yes,
Wow.
we have mainframes.
Yeah.
We are doing data centers for a couple other hospital groups.
My company runs worldwide across several time zones and many sites with 4 full-time IT people.
Yeah.
That's it.
But how
Do you
many?
feel that that's light? Or do you feel like, oh man,
I
we
feel
have
like
one
it's
more person?
Adequate. I feel like we all have enough work to do without being totally slammed. And
You get to go home at the end of the day and feel comfortable that, like,
absolutely. And then and things. It's helpful because my colleagues in Europe do a lot of maintenance work for me before I come in for the day, and I do maintenance work for them when they leave at night. So it works both ways that way.
Your time shifting work.
I was just going to
Yeah.
say, having people around the world setting some support is phenomenal.
Yes, it's great. And I mean,
How many users?
company-wide, probably about 500.
Spread
Yeah.
over 4 sites.
Spread over, 4 time zones.
Oh, 4 times.
We have, let's see, 1 gallery location in Zurich, but a couple of accessory sites for other things like storage and personnel, and private sites for my superiors. Also in London, we have 1 site in London. We just opened a new gallery in Somerset this past weekend, which is about 4 hours outside of London. Also, there are various other private sites in England and UK, and here in New York there's 2 sites and 1 in LA. So we're pretty busy, but not swamped. I still have an opportunity to learn things that I find interesting, and I get time out to come here almost every month, so
Sounds like a pretty ideal situation.
it's pretty good.
Do you ever go to the conferences?
No, I haven't had a chance to get that done yet. Haven't really been able to get away for that long, 4 or 5 days. I mean, it would really only be like 1 workday on either end probably,
Yeah.
but haven't had a chance to get there. Hopefully next year it'll be good. My boss manages to go to the conference in Sweden because he's in Zurich, so he managed to go there, which is not too long of a haul for him. but I haven't made it to a conference myself yet.
Well, he goes to the one in Europe. They should send you to one in the U.S. somewhere.
I'll tell him you said that.
Yeah.
We drove out. Wasn't that bad?
Yeah. I don't think the travel part of it isn't it. It's usually being able to put some of the projects on hold and remember to take the time off before I use all my vacation for the year. That kind of stuff.
Yeah. And yeah, so speaking of conferences, yeah, big thank you to everyone who at Penn State who mentioned MacTech conference. I've had a lot of people saying, I met someone at Penn State that said I should go to MacTech. So yeah, big thanks for that, because that's really nice. Both attendees and people saying, hey, I was told I should speak at MacTech. Okay, good.
I had a couple of people tell me that I should speak either at MacTech or at Penn State next year, which has me wondering, like, there's so many topics already, like, where is the gap that where are the opportunities for people to still come in on a topic that's different?
My rule is speak about something you're passionate about. That's it. That's all I want out of people speaking. Like, I want them to be happy that they're speaking about a topic, not like assigned, like, oh, here, go learn this thing. And,
yeah.
You know,
I realize it's
like,
a question largely for myself.
Yeah, something you're passionate about, and then, again, when you do get people tackling you in the hall, like, people who are passionate about something usually know it pretty deeply, right? So they're going to be able to answer those questions. And if not, it usually inspires them to then go find out the answer rather than like, oh, I was assigned this topic, well, I'll maybe get back to you with an answer, maybe not. So yeah, that's my rule number one is, what do you really enjoy about this? What have you sort of discovered? And then, you know, is there enough to teach people about it? Like, you know, that's the other thing. At MacTech, usually our talks are half an hour. Penn State, what are they? Still an hour
75, yeah.
That's a lot of time to fill, man. So,
It is.
like, it's a different kind of thing. I mean, they've been doing that for a number of years, so I guess it's been working out for them. But that's a lot of time to fill.
Sometimes they get like the two presenters, you know, in one session or whatever, which can sometimes help alleviate that. But the workshops in particular, to do a 6-hour workshop seems like a pretty daunting kind of a thing to take on.
Yeah, I mean, that's a different sort of thing, I think. There's you know, from what I do with the really short talks, which my goal is just to sort of spark the conversation. You know, a half an hour is not enough to like become a master at anything, but you know, I don't know, it's an hour and a half. You know, so that's just there to spark the conversation. But the all-day workshops make sense too, because there are people who really do want to take a much deeper dive into things. So that's cool. So they're doing that the day before the conference still.
Yeah. Same structure as MacTech, I guess. Do many people make it to both or to all three if you include the one in Sweden? Other than presenters?
Do,
yeah.
But yeah, that's because I usually speak at most of them.
Right.
And I run one of them, so that's. But just before we get too far off on that, yeah. So in the chat room, Rich Trouton says, yeah, propose talks and pick a topic you know about. And Rich.
You need to know about it?
Yeah, you should know about it, I guess. Pick something that you know that you think other folks don't know. Use that as a top proposal.
I demoed something and then specifically warned against using it. That's just because I need a little drama in my life, I guess. You know, it's not enough drama.
Papine did something like that too in his session. I don't know if you were at that one. Something about Endpoint Manager. He made some joke about how it has many great uses, which I haven't found any of yet, or something like that.
Yeah, at the Jamf user group, I had a slide of all the things that are good about Composer.
Was it an empty slide?
And Casper Admin, that's what I said. But I don't know, they still fed me pizza afterwards, so I guess I still got to wear a party hat, even though I smashed the birthday boy's cake.
Papine's in the chat, by the way. He said that was SharePoint.
SharePoint, there it
Though
is.
SCCM was a good candidate, too. All right.
Yeah, SharePoint. Can't believe you had to integrate with that.
Any other wrap-up on conference stuff? Burning questions that you need answers from your fellow Mac admins?
My conference question would just be like, if you were going to design a new conference, what would it like what's missing? Because I always have this vague feeling like that there's a MacAdmin conference that's missing.
Like New York one,
I don't
Manhattan.
know. That would be nice.
Yeah.
I just have to say there was.
That
I
should
met
just never happen.
outside of this room. There was nobody I met from the New York City area out of the 397 people.
Yeah, well, you want a better cross section, I think. And
You
that's
just think
also why you
Pennsylvania is
go-
not that far. Like there'd be a few more Manhattan,
Right, you weren't drinking in the right
five
places.
boroughs people.
You weren't drinking in the right places.
I guess not.
So-
I had people on the Twitter asking me
Also,
about New York
to
stuff.
answer
It's not-
your question about that, I mean, I know, with running MacTech conference, it's definitely changed a bit every year. I always want it to be malleable, and I always want it to, like, as I find the good things every year, I kind of want to keep those and like learn the things that don't work and sort of drop those away. So, I never want to think of like, oh, MacTech, it's in its final form, and we're going to do, rubber stamp this factory thing every year. So, I don't know. I guess I have the same question because I run a conference.
Well, my feeling is that the thing that's missing is there isn't a more technical MacAdmin conference, like a no beginners MacTech conference. I don't know there's a market for one.
I don't know that, I agree with that. There really isn't one because of,
But that would be, to
Some of
me,
the things-
that's the missing.
although that's kind of what we shoot for. I think that's how we MacTech,
Yeah.
that's how we differentiate each other. That's how we differentiate ourselves from most other conferences. We're not doing the beginner stuff. We
Right.
do shoot for detailed, more technical topics, especially this very last year.
Yeah,
Like
that's
this,
true.
this very last year, almost everything was a technical dive on some topic rather than, this is DNS, or this is some, I told, like this last year, like even, Greg and Matt did the Python talk. Greg didn't do packaging and monkey, right? Like, done. We've covered those.
Yeah.
Let's move on. So, I have been kind of shooting for that. And I don't want talks on, oh, here's this Apple thing, and here's how you use it. Like the way Apple intended, right? I'd much rather have, like, here are all these tools Apple says works. But they
Charles
don't,
Charles
so-
would get that done on the plane on the way over. You could pull a talk together like that in the plane ride.
Yeah.
But yeah, we were doing reverse engineering with Sam Marshall. Jesus Christmas, that was
Oh,
an
I
in-depth
meant that.
freaking talk.
Yes, that was an in-depth talk. Those are the things I'm kind of
I could hear like ooh going flying by my head.
So,
It's like being in a wind tunnel.
yeah, Sam will be back this year to speak, so we'll get some more of those. Michael Lynn will be presenting. So Frogar on IRC, so you know him from OS 10 server, that he's always in sort of the deep end of the pool. But yeah, you're right. Like, if it's a pyramid, the very, very technical people are just sort of this little tiny portion of the top of the pyramid. So it's tough to have a conference for that. So you have to sort of widen that base a little bit. But I agree with you. Those are the things that attract me. Like, I'm not in it for the DNS talk. Or
Right. I mean, it's good to meet those people. I'm not actually going to those conferences, but I think sometimes you wish. I missed last year's MacTech because I was at Lisa.
Right.
And Lisa is like an interesting example. It's like it way over my head. Like,
And also not Mac focused.
no, but just in general, like
Everyone there
it's a
uses a
really-
Mac, but they're
Right.
not.
But it's a really technical conference. It's like everyone you're expected to have, 10,000 machines under management to show up at that conference.
Yeah.
And like I guess MacTech is probably the closest thing. You have to that kind of level of conference in the Mac world.
It's so weird that they still have those type of conferences that it's like you need a white paper to get in, to be a speaker.
Well,
It's just strange how that expectation is kind of there that like we'll release new research as part of this event.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange where it's like for me I go to an event, I would really like a fast internet connection, kind of, right? I really like the people who want to go drink. And I like the people who work have the time to work together and an entertaining speaker. And like that's it. Like that's all I kind of can. A couple of solid hours of that at any point at any
Yeah.
conference, that's rock and roll. in between there, just because I'm going to find people who are really excited about doing it. At LABSA, Jeremy Reichman was there, and we just rocked and rolled. It was just because he was like, "You Mac now talk." It was like about security and all. You'll get in a state of mind where you want to be if you're excited about the people that you're at the conference with. It's not necessarily it's all coming from the organizers. So
I mean, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Different tracks almost seems to be a way to sometimes accomplish that. But I think part of the trouble with doing like an all advanced is that if you want to have a diverse cross section of topics in their sort of advanced, I feel like there is nobody who is really advanced in a whole lot of different topics, or at least all of the random topics that you might pick for a conference. There might be 10 different things that you could say you're at an advanced level with, for example, and 100 things you could possibly be at an advanced level with, or 1,000.
Right.
And
but
so you
sometimes
wind up
that's-
being a beginner in
But-
something, or
Right,
being
but then you go to
intermediate
those
at
sessions
something.
And you
and,
hear
like,
from the people
who are advanced, and
Yeah.
like hopefully some of it rubs off, and like then they're a contact for you, and you sit down and have lunch with them and say, how do I get started? Or,
One of
something
the-
along those lines.
Yeah.
In my opinion, one of the best things about technology is that, yeah, maybe in your end of the pool, you might be, well within your abilities to do other things. But one of my favorite things to do is dive in a place where I know nothing, and I'm way over my head.
Mhm.
And I find those experiences to be far more rewarding than the experiences where you are, 3/4 of the way up the bell curve, where the majority of things that are going on, you're kind of filling in the gaps of your knowledge. I personally would rather be in way over my head and have no clue what's going on around me, because I feel like those experiences provide you more valuable lessons than you would get if you were to go to something that you already know 3/4 of the content on. What good is that? It's like reading a
course.
textbook if you've already
Right.
passed the exam. Why bother?
Of course, and for somebody who knows 3/4 of the content, which is true for a lot of things, and you know the right 3/4 that is a good starting point to make an advanced session from, then I think that has a tremendous amount of value. Or to be thrown into something where to be thrown into something where you know almost nothing and try to grasp on and get a hold of it is very valuable. I went to 1 or 2 conferences like that, and the packet sniffing for admins, right? I've done a little ether peek and packet sniffing and whatever over the years, but Johan is way out of my league in that particular arena. But there's also some value to be given to knowing a subject 3/4 of the way and having a session, I think, like Ed was asking for, that is a bit more of a, all right, well, you've got the basics down, now let's really get advanced with this stuff.
Well, I mean, also to me, a lot of times it's about, if someone's going to present packet sniffing, like it's not something I know a lot about, but that person wouldn't have to explain what a packet is. Or,
Right.
Yeah.
and
Right.
which is not to belittle people who need that explanation. Like, you can go to a lot of these conferences, like, oh, I'm a desktop support person and I need this explained to me. But like, where do you start the talk from, and also it has a lot to do with the people you meet. I guess what I'm saying is I'm not saying I would want a really advanced conference and I wouldn't go to any of the others. Like, I would still want to go to all the others. Like, I like meeting people who are just starting out. I like meeting people who are taking it or coming over from another platform and taking a new look at things. But, I think there's a value to being with people who are already pretty advanced in the area, all have different pluses and minuses, and have different strengths and different weaknesses in different areas. But starting with this baseline of like, well, we all know this.
Yeah.
And I think MacTech probably is moving in that direction. That's going to be the place where the people are going to be professionals. I guess to me, it's a matter of like being with people who are, and this is what I do.
Yeah.
And I think that's fair.
We're also not going to get those I'm supporting the development house people much other places than on the left coast at something like MacTech. Just because there's so many people that are like, I want to use these enterprise tools for desktops, or I have to deal with all these strange things in my environment. I just don't see a lot of like, I don't see people saying, let's use Homebrew Cask to deploy apps with, because it's command line geeky and yet it's GUI apps and we can automate it from the command line. It's a horrible thing to try to do, but like, I don't see a lot of experimental. Yeah, what are you talking about, man? I don't see like a lot of experimental stuff necessarily.
Maybe people have experimented with it, it just sucks.
I just mean like all of these. There's people who should like star deploy, right? There's these things that don't seem that they're particularly applicable in a lot of other contexts, but a lab context, this is what it was made for. Educational context, what it was made for, is a purpose-built tool for that environment. But like the other side of development coming down, or the DevOpsian, buzzwordian ways of trying to manage a fleet of machines, I just don't see that necessarily leaking down. I see more like we had an SNMP talk this year. That was one of the geekier ones, you know, like down the other sides of things necessarily. So if we get more of that anywhere.
I also think we're moving into a world where there's more and more enterprises deploying more and more Macs.
Finally, yeah.
And I just don't think we don't hear from those people so much.
It's true.
No, you're right.
I mean, they're these big
Yeah.
companies, like some of the highest.
Like Cisco or
Yes.
Cisco,
So since you brought that
Motorola.
up, we can use them as an example. I was going to say no names, but
Yeah.
since you brought that up, like I guess it's a public thing. You know, like our Apple rep at one point said, "Hey, would you guys mind talking to Cisco? They're looking to roll out a bunch of Macs. Maybe you can tell them how you manage Macs." I'm like, no, that's a great conversation to have, but like, yeah, why don't we see more Cisco people at these conferences, or
because they're all at the
on-
networking conferences.
on mailing lists? Hey, I'm on network admin.
There's a list of companies.
Cisco.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, we won't name the other ones, but we often have, someone from Apple call us up and say, "Hey, there's this company B.
How
know
far?
them."
How far into it are they already? Like, are they just starting and they're just trying to
Sometimes
figure
it's
it out?
just they're just starting, like, "Hey, we're replacing all of our Windows machines, or we're replacing this," or "Hey, it's finally gotten to a sizable point, and we don't know how."
So that's
to
the thing. It
manage
may be that they're just not a part of the Mac
But there's,
environment
Right,
at
but
all.
like-
but there's companies that I know that are primarily Mac, that are fairly large companies, and I don't hear from them. And,
Do you ever
Both
think that
companies-
maybe they're okay with a solution that isn't fully baked, that isn't necessarily as functional or
Yeah, possibly.
seamless
Well, yeah,
as
so-
we would want them to be,
Yeah.
given?
I mean, one answer is that they're just not interested in doing a better job. Right.
Right.
I'm just wondering, that list now is so long that I'm wondering, I'm not hearing from the people. You think at least some of them.
I agree, and I think the thing is, like, I always praise the Mac for being one of the best to work in, and I will still say that, and I'll stand by that. It's the most friendly, people share the most information, it's manageable, and all those things. But at the same time, I've been putting together public meetups in the New York area. Before MacAdmin, I held a PCN group in New York, and before that, there was other things. For like 12 years, I've been doing this, and I always find, like, it frustrates me, like, why aren't there more people here? Like, here's a free resource for you to use, and someone's giving a talk or someone's giving out free information, and you have like 8 people. This is the tri-state area. There have to be tons of people here.
Yeah.
I have to say, in my experience at least, if my boss didn't tell me that this was a thing while he was here and onboarding me,
Right.
I probably would never have known that it existed and would probably never have wound up here.
Right, so I don't know how to, like, very specifically, since this is currently a thing, MacAdmin Monthly, it's like, how do you get that word out? Like, OS 10 server, we put it out there. This was the first thing I listed on Meetup for a while, because that seemed to be the place people were going to find out about these things, and I wanted to reach a new audience. Like, I wanted to reach people that, like, Alistair, I've known you for a long time. Like, you probably would have found out about this because I would have mentioned it or something, right? But
Wiley.
like, how do we expand the group that this reaches? I have no idea.
It's hard. I mean, I've been into the Mac stuff since literally I was 9 years old, and I did not hear about any of this stuff. PSU Mac admins, Mac Tech. I
Didn't
may have.
exist, when you were
No, it didn't. But this group, I mean, I feel like even for people who travel in some of the Apple circles, I feel like you have to have travel in very specific ones in order to have done more than just pass this as a half a sentence while you were looking for something else maybe and didn't notice it, or.
But I think that's part of the conversation we have too. Like, oh, hey, this is so-and-so from Apple. Would you mind talking to Cisco or whoever for us? And during that conversation, I'll always say, hey, we have this monthly meetup. Why don't you join in? You know. But I think the corollary to that, though, is I'm very happy to see more of these types of meetings pop up. There's one, what's the...
MacBrain.
There's MacBrain, and I was going to say there's one
MacDMV.
MacDMV. So, like, hey, I'm glad to see that happening. I'm glad to see more and more.
Chicago Mac.
I was going to say
as well.
there's one in Chicago too. So, like, that's great to see. So, I wish we could join forces somehow, but like, it's still great to see more and more groups of people getting together. So, great. But it still surprises me, like, in Manhattan, with the companies we have here, you know, maybe they're just more window shops than I assume. I don't know.
I mean, I know, advertising and publishing are based in New York.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Macs, and I just think that I have my own opinions about why people don't become more involved in.
Because they're anticipating.
They're too busy. They are.
No, they're not. They're not interested in doing a better job.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's a piece
they're,
of it.
that the Mac people are relegated to this tech support level, and when they start moving up, in order to move up in the organization, you have to become a Windows person. And so the people who are the actual managers are not actually interested in the Mac platform. But that's just an opinion. I don't know.
Also, a lot of those shops are consultancies that there isn't a real in-house Mac team.
I don't want to name names. Like, I know of companies with 2,000 or 3,000 Macs with 10 or 12 full-time employees, and I know they see the people in charge of those things, and I never hear from them.
Why don't you contact them?
I have.
Why do you know? It sounds like you're slacking.
I mean,
contact them and say we got this monthly.
Back-end results.
I mean,
Coffees for
don't
closers.
you guys think that it can be fairly easy to get lost in what you're doing? Like, if you're in the middle of something, you ever like look at your watch and go, crap, it's 3:30, I haven't eaten lunch yet, I should probably take care of that. Because you're busy, you're involved, you're engrossed, you're doing
but
something.
not every month. But I will agree with that. There are, like, even to, like, really bright people here that I know, right, that, like, don't blog and aren't on Twitter, and just, like, you'd never know about them, but, And
a lot of how they became really brilliant is they have these blinders on, and so that one thing that they've been doing, 67 hours a week for 7 years in a row, they're amazing at, but they literally are just not
nothing else.
At least for some of them, I don't know. It's a pretty diverse world out there.
I can also imagine that it would be easy to find yourself chained to your desk on the day that things go, because I mean, we all know that things go south for no reason sometimes, and like things are broken. And I've missed one of these meetings for both of those two reasons that I've mentioned. One time I've looked and gone, 4:30, whoops, and then the other time it's 2 o'clock and something breaks and it requires your attention, and you really cannot peel yourself away.
Sure, a lot of them. Right, but every month?
No,
probably not.
And that's also the to me, it's conferences seem to, it's like you don't. Crap, I was listening in California, like keep planning. These 2 days I'm going to go to this conference, get on the airplane, and so I feel like, why are those people there? Why are those people do other things?
Yeah. Good question.
I think part of it also ties into the question of that you were talking about earlier, where the Mac people, if they want to move up the chain, right, they have to go the Linux Unix route or the Windows route, and then kind of line up in the middle. So I think a lot of people who are the most interested in this are in those smaller groups within an organization, where maybe if they left early for the day to come to something like this, now the only Mac guy at the place isn't there, or...
That's my scenario.
Yeah.
I'm not there.
But you've done your job during the day. You did all your work, and things are going to continue on autopilot without you. That's the goal, right? You want to be able to go home at night. You want to be able to go do things. So you probably didn't just like make some major change and walk out to come here.
Yeah.
Right? Also, things aren't in session right now, right? Largely.
Not in session.
You're not.
Yeah.
So you kind of have some
Wiggle room, yeah.
wiggle room yet now. All right. But a slight tangent to that is, though, I find that a little frustrating because, I love Macs, right? But at the same time, I've always been involved with Linux and Unix and Windows. Not like I want to learn all this stuff. So, if you wear multiple hats in your role and one of them deals with Macs, like I would be doing things to extend my knowledge in that direction anyway, whether that's going to conferences or coming to regular meetups like this or joining mailing lists or whatever. So I don't know.
Well, that raises the other question: like, are there generalist conferences that
Yeah.
I should be going to, or one should be going to?
Huh. It's a good question.
And I kind of feel like that may also be something that's missing in the
Yeah, that might be too tough because
We also mentioned Lisa last year. It's like, it's sort of a Unix thing, but it's really focused on this
large scale.
On large scale. So yeah, but we're talking about a lot of different platforms and just about working at scale. Of course, it's not very interesting, but it's another way to group things besides platform.
Interesting. Yeah, actually, so someone just hit me on Twitter instead of the chat, Jason Bush, and said some people just look at tech as a 9 to 5. Yeah, so that's certainly a possibility that it's just their job and they're not looking to make a craft out of it or it pays the bills and you go home at night. I don't know.
They do 80% of their IT work through Google searches because
Stack Overflow.
That person that
All right.
interviewed.
Any
I can
comments
Google it.
from anyone on the Hangout? Or saw some people joining kind of late? Going once, going twice. Burning questions from people in attendance? Adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Thanks.